One humid night in Round Rock, Texas, the woman I had built my life with for over 6 years, mother of our 3 children, turned to me as calmly as if she were talking about dinner and dropped a sentence that cracked my world open. I'm going to be a surrogate for Mark and Sam. Everything is already in place. Mark was her twin sister's husband. At first, I thought I'd misheard her, but the look on Rachel's face told me I hadn't. She had gone to a clinic in Dallas without saying a word to me, paid with money from our joint account, and had already begun hormone injections. She hadn't asked. She hadn't discussed. She had simply decided. Mark, my brother-in-law, already knew before I did. When I demanded an explanation, she shrugged. "It's my body. I'll do what I believe is right, whether you agree or not." That night, I sat on the edge of our bed staring at the woman who used to call me her entire world. Something inside me hardened. If she chose to cut me out of this decision, then she would have to learn how to live without me. Divorce wasn't going to be quiet. I was going to let her feel the full weight of her choice. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 38 years old, a field technician for a telecom company in Austin. I've never been wealthy, but I've always worked hard to keep a roof over my family. Rachel, my wife, was 35, a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm. Together, we had 3 children, Luke, our oldest, who had just started first grade, and our 2-year-old twins, Chloe and Mason. We lived in a peaceful neighborhood in Round Rock, rows of red brick houses with neatly trimmed lawns. Neighbors waved when you drove by, kids pedaled their bikes until the streetlights came on, and the evening air often carried the scent of backyard barbecue. To me, it felt like the kind of place where real trouble could never reach. Most evenings, I came home to Rachel's smile at the door, a quick hug, some light remark about dinner or diapers. We'd gather around the oak table, eat together while Luke shared school stories, and the twins babbled from their high chairs. Laughter filled our house. At the time, I thought those dinners were just ordinary moments. Only later did I realize they were the last stretch of calm before a storm I never saw coming. Rachel and I had met in our mid-20s at a backyard cookout in San Antonio. She had a sharp wit and an easy laugh that drew people in. Family was her world, and no bond mattered more than the one she shared with her twin sister, Sam. Sam lived in Dallas with her husband, Mark, a construction engineer. For years they tried to have a baby, but nothing worked. Rachel felt her sister's pain deeply. When the two of them talked on the phone, the world disappeared for her. I admired that closeness, never imagining it might one day test the limits of our marriage. Life in Round Rock followed its own rhythm. Saturdays meant mowing the yard while the kids drew chalk on the driveway. Sundays we'd go to the farmer's market for peaches and brisket. Rachel loved hosting barbecues. Sometimes Sam and Mark drove down from Dallas, and our backyard would fill with smoke from the grill and the sound of voices. Evenings were my favorite, Rachel sipping sweet tea, me with a cold beer, the twins chasing fireflies while Luke practiced football throws. I thought it was steady, strong, unshakable. But storms don't come with warnings. They gather slowly while you're busy believing tomorrow will look just like today. I started noticing Rachel change. She wasn't cold, just distant, distracted, like her mind had slipped somewhere I couldn't follow. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages meant for someone else. I convinced myself it was work pressure, maybe something with Sam. She began taking day trips to Dallas, always saying she was helping her sister with personal stuff. I trusted her. I wanted to, but little signs piled up. Hushed phone calls outside, vague explanations, evenings where her eyes seemed far away. Then came the Thursday night in late summer when everything fell apart. The cicadas screamed in the thick Texas heat. The kids were finally asleep. I sat half dozing through a late-night comedy show while Rachel scrolled her phone across the couch. Then she set it down and looked at me. "I've decided to do something." Her voice was calm, steady, the voice she used only when her mind was made up. I muted the TV. "What's going on?" "I'm going to be a surrogate for Sam and Mark." At first, I waited for the smirk, the laugh, the gotcha. but her face stayed composed, businesslike. "What do you mean?" I asked. She explained that Sam couldn't carry a baby, that IVF had failed, and since she and Sam shared DNA, she was the perfect candidate. She said it as if it were a noble duty, not a life-altering decision. "You've already started this?" My chest tightened. Rachel nodded. She had already spoken to the Dallas clinic. Everything was arranged. "And you didn't think this was worth discussing with me?" "I knew you'd freak out," she said flatly. "This is important, Ethan. I'm doing this for my sister." I leaned forward, fighting to keep my voice calm. "So you're planning to carry Mark's baby under our roof without even asking me?" "It's not Mark's baby. It's Sam and Mark's embryo. Genetically, it's theirs. I'm just the carrier." "You mean you're carrying another man's child in our marriage? Do you understand what that means for us?" She crossed her arms. "I understand exactly, and I knew you'd react like this, which is why I didn't tell you sooner." Her casual tone cut deeper than the decision itself. My opinion didn't matter. "Rachel, this isn't just your body. This is our marriage, our family, our home. You blindsided me. If you loved me, you'd respect this." I stared at her, realizing we weren't even in the same book anymore. "Respect? You don't show respect by hiding life-changing decisions from your husband." "This is about helping my sister," she said firmly. "I can't watch her suffer anymore. I'm doing this, with or without your permission." Her words dropped like a hammer. "So I'm supposed to watch you carry another man's child and just pretend it's fine?" "You can call it whatever you want, but this is happening." Her voice carried a finality that left no room for discussion. "If you go through with this," I said quietly, "it's going to tear us apart." She looked at me for a moment, then walked past toward the hallway. "Then maybe we're not as strong as I thought." Her footsteps faded, leaving me in silence, fists clenched, heart pounding like thunder in my chest. This wasn't a fight we'd get over. It was a fracture down the middle of everything we'd built. The following days were worse than shouting. Silence settled in the house like smoke after a fire. We spoke only about the children or household basics. Rachel discussed doctor visits and hormone shots openly on the phone, as if I weren't sitting just a few feet away, as if I no longer existed in that part of her life. One evening, I opened the fridge and found a white box labeled fertility medication. Vials, syringes, instructions inside. I set it on the counter, waiting for her to see. When she walked in, she didn't look up from her phone. "They came early. I need to start treatment this week." No apology, no hesitation, just a woman moving forward without me. "You didn't think this deserved another conversation?" I asked. She finally looked up, her eyes flat. "We're past conversations, Ethan. I told you. I'm doing this." "You're ignoring me. You don't care that you're pushing me away." She rolled her eyes. "Stop being dramatic. It's 9 months. I'll hand the baby over, and life goes on. I'm not replacing our kids. I'm helping my sister." My voice turned cold. "Call it what you want, but if you do this, I won't stay in this marriage." Her jaw tightened. "Then leave. If your pride can't handle it, that's your problem." "Pride?" I shook my head slowly. "This is about partnership." She picked up the box and turned away, leaving me with the crushing realization that in her mind, my role in this decision was already over. I stood frozen in the kitchen, watching her walk away with that box in her hands, carrying it as casually as if it were just a bag of groceries. Something deep inside me shifted, not in anger, but in an unshakable certainty. "Rachel," I called after her, my voice steady but hard. "If you think I'm going to stand here and let you carry Mark's child in this house, you're wrong. I told you what would happen." She stopped in the doorway, her shoulders stiffening. Without turning fully, she said, "And I told you, Ethan." "I'm doing this. Nothing you say will change that. I felt the last fragile thread tying us together snap. Then I'll be contacting a lawyer, I said. She turned to face me, her eyes sharp with disbelief. Unbelievable. You'd throw away 6 years of marriage over this? I stepped closer. No, Rachel. You threw it away the moment you decided my opinion didn't matter. Her lips pressed tight, but she didn't argue further. She just turned and disappeared down the hall into the guest room. That night, lying awake in the silence of our bedroom, I knew this wasn't an argument that could be patched up. This wasn't a fight we'd get past. This was the beginning of the end. The next morning, the house felt haunted. We moved through the halls like ghosts, avoiding each other. She stayed in the guest room most nights, saying she needed space. I stayed in the master bedroom, the kids' rooms just down the hall. When we spoke, it was in clipped exchanges about school, groceries, bills. Everything else was silence, but the talk of surrogacy never stopped. Rachel sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, video calling Sam or the clinic, discussing embryo transfers and hormone schedules like she was planning a celebration. I'd pass by, feel the heat build in my chest. Not jealousy, not exactly, but a kind of fury at her audacity. She carried on as though I wasn't even part of the equation. 2 evenings later, I came home and found another box from the fertility clinic waiting on the porch. She'd already opened it. Vials, syringes, instructions spread across the counter like she was preparing for battle. When she caught me staring, she simply said, "It's almost time." No smile, no apology, just a cold fact, like I was nothing more than a bystander. I stared at those syringes, my stomach tightening. "Rachel," I said slowly, "understand something. If you go through with this, I won't be here for you. Not during the pregnancy, not after." She didn't even look up as she sorted through the supplies. "You've made that clear." "I'm serious," I pressed. "Don't expect me to drive you to appointments or run out for your cravings. You chose to do this without me. You can live with it without me." That finally made her glance up, her eyes sharp. "You think refusing to help me will change anything? This is happening." I shook my head. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just making sure you know what to expect." She gave a humorless laugh, then closed the box with a snap. The sound felt like the last nail sealing our marriage shut. 2 days later, I sat in my truck outside a law office in downtown Austin, staring at the glass door. I'd rehearsed this step 100 times, but walking in made it real. The lawyer, a calm man in his 50s, listened as I told him everything, how Rachel had gone behind my back, used our money, shut me out, completely. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "You have grounds. Texas law requires a 1-year separation before the divorce is finalized, but we can start immediately." By the time I left his office, paperwork in hand, the weight pressed down hard. This wasn't just ending a marriage, it was drawing a line I could never cross back over. That night, I told Rachel. She stood in the living room, arms folded, eyes blazing. "So you just ran to a lawyer? You think this scares me?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you, I'm done." Her voice dropped to a sharp whisper, almost hissing. "You're overreacting. We can fix this if you just accept what I'm doing." I stepped closer, my tone firm. "You're not hearing me. There's no fixing this. You spent our money without asking. You made the choice alone. You didn't just cross a line. You burned it." Her eyes glistened, but not from sadness. They were hot, angry tears. "I didn't think it would come to this. God, you're so cold." "Maybe I am now," I said bitterly. "But I wasn't cold when I begged you to talk to me first. You turned me into this." She shut her mouth tight, spun on her heel, and stormed upstairs. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, wishing it was just a nightmare. But this was only the beginning. Because Texas law meant the divorce couldn't be finalized for a year, Rachel refused to move out. She claimed she had nowhere else to go, that the kids needed stability, that she might need bed rest. I didn't want to uproot the children either, so we lived under one roof, strangers in the same house. We became silent roommates. She slept in the guest room or on the couch. We left notes for each other instead of speaking. The kids noticed. One night, Luke asked me quietly, "Dad, why don't you and Mom sit together anymore?" I told him, "Sometimes grown-ups don't get along, but I'll always be here for you." Meanwhile, Rachel's pregnancy became the unspoken center of the house. Every appointment, every symptom, every package from the clinic was a reminder. It wasn't home anymore. It was a waiting room for collapse. One Saturday, I came back from mowing the lawn to find Mark and Sam sitting in my living room with Rachel, flipping through a baby catalog. Rachel sat with her hand on her belly, chatting about cribs and strollers. Mark looked up. "Hey man, we were just planning for the baby." I stood there, sweaty from the Texas heat, staring at them in my house. "Why don't you buy those things for your own home?" I said flatly. Sam crossed her arms. "We just thought Rachel should have what she needs here." "Don't treat my house like your personal baby headquarters," I snapped. Rachel flushed. "You're being unreasonable." "No," I said, jaw tight. "Maybe show me the same respect you're giving them." The silence was suffocating. Finally, Sam grabbed Mark's arm and dragged him out, but the heaviness lingered long after. From that day forward, Rachel moved with deliberate defiance, and I stopped softening any edges. The kids felt the tension. Meals grew quieter. Rachel still took calls from Sam in the kitchen, her voice low but not low enough. I'd hear words like "next ultrasound" or "Mark's excited," and my chest would burn. As her belly grew, the requests started small: water, vitamins, a pillow. I refused every time. One night, she followed me down the hall. "Ethan, my back's killing me. Can you grab me a pillow?" "Ask Mark," I said coldly. "He's the father of the baby." Her voice rose. "What kind of man refuses to help his wife?" "You're not carrying my child," I shot back. "Don't expect me to play the supportive husband while you carry another man's baby." Her eyes flashed, but I walked away. It didn't take long for her family to get involved. Her mother called, scolding me for being selfish. Her father threatened me, saying I'd regret it. I just told them both the same thing: ask Rachel why she did it behind my back. The breaking point came late one night. A pounding on my bedroom door jolted me awake. "Ethan," Rachel's voice was panicked. "My water broke. The contractions are coming. Please help me." I opened the door to find her hunched over, gripping her belly, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. For a split second, muscle memory almost kicked in, memories of Luke's birth, of holding her hand. But the bitterness won. "I'm not taking you to the hospital," I said flatly. "That's Mark's job." Her eyes widened in shock. "Mark's not answering, and Sam's phone is dead. I need to get there now." I shrugged. "Call an ambulance." She stared at me, desperation mixing with disbelief. I refused to step in. Her eyes locked with mine, desperate, but I stayed firm. "Watch me," I muttered before stepping back and shutting the door. Not long after, I heard the frantic shuffle of her hands against her phone, followed by the faint echo of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed against my bedroom walls as paramedics came and carried her away. I stayed motionless in bed, a tug of guilt pressing at me. For a moment, I remembered the woman I had once sworn to stand beside, but I pushed the feeling down. She had chosen her path, chosen to cut me out. Why should I pretend to care, especially for a child that wasn't mine? By the next morning, my phone was buzzing with missed calls and furious voicemails from her mother. I didn't bother listening to more than a few seconds. Rachel was admitted for several days, and I only learned through her family that the baby, a premature girl, had survived. Rachel herself was struggling with complications, while Mark shuffled between two hospital rooms, his wife Sam in one, and the infant in another. Through it all, I carried on as though nothing had shifted. School, runs, work, dinner with the kids. It was routine, and Rachel's choices were no longer my responsibility. When her mother told me Rachel would be discharged soon, I brushed her off with a flat, "That's her decision," before ending the call. It was a Tuesday when she finally came back. I was sitting in the living room reading when the door creaked open. She stepped in, pale and exhausted, carrying a car seat with a tiny newborn inside. She lowered it gently, collapsed onto the couch, and exhaled as though her body weighed too much for her bones. The baby whimpered softly, the sound filling the room like an unwanted reminder of everything that had fallen apart. "Why are you here with her?" I asked sharply. "Shouldn't she be with Sam?" Rachel shut her eyes. "Sam's still in recovery. Mark's drowning. They asked me to keep the baby for a few weeks." "They asked," I scoffed. "Or you volunteered." Her gaze hardened. "Does it matter? She's helpless. I can't abandon her." "You should have thought of that before volunteering your body as a surrogate," I snapped. "But let's be clear, I'm not lifting a finger. If you're too tired, that's on you." Her lip trembled, a tear sliding down her cheek, but she said nothing. I turned back to my book. The nights that followed were hellish. Crying that never ended, shrill wails echoing through the hallway, slipping beneath my bedroom door. Rachel shuffled like a ghost, eyes hollowed, hair tied in a careless knot. Sometimes she knocked on my door in the middle of the night. "Ethan, please," she whispered once, voice breaking. "Just half an hour. I haven't slept. She won't stop screaming." I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "Call Mark. Call your mother, not me." Her tears glistened. "She's innocent. She didn't choose this." "Neither did I said coldly. She turned away, shoulders trembling as she disappeared down the hall. The cries trailed after her like a haunting shadow. I crushed whatever pity tried to rise. I'd warned her, and now she was living it. Her parents arrived often, full of accusations and disapproval. Her mother's finger wagged at me. "You're heartless. Rachel just gave birth and you've abandoned her." Her father tried intimidation, looming in the kitchen. "She's postpartum. She needs care. You're despicable." I stared him down. "She made her choice. Let Mark deal with it. Or you." They muttered and stormed out, but kept returning, thinking guilt might wear me down. It didn't. I grew colder, more resolute. Let them call me heartless. I knew better. Rachel gambled with our marriage, with my trust, and she lost. While they wasted energy scolding me, I quietly prepared for what really mattered: court. I collected bank statements, highlighted charges from the clinic, documented her forging my signature. My lawyer was clear. "This isn't about feelings. It's facts. She spent marital funds without consent. The child isn't yours. The court will recognize that." Rachel seemed blind to reality, still cooing over baby milestones with Sam, as if our marriage could be salvaged. At night, while the cries carried through the guest room walls, I built a fortress of evidence at the dining table, brick by brick, page by page. 2 weeks later, Rachel finally confronted me. The baby slept nearby in a bassinet. "I need financial help," she said bluntly. "For what?" "My doctor says I need rest, not work. I need support for bills, food, the kids." "When we're divorced," I cut in, "I'll pay for our children, but no spousal support." Her eyes flashed. "I gave up everything for my sister. Don't I deserve stability?" "You did it for her, not for me. That's the difference." Her voice shook. "You don't care I'm battling postpartum depression." "I care about our kids," I answered flatly, "not the consequences you chose." Her shoulders sagged, and she muttered, "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Soon she began packing, boxes lining the hall, her suitcase near the door, the baby carrier beside it. The kids wandered confused. Luke whispered, "Is Mom leaving forever?" I told him she'd still see them, but his eyes fell anyway. That afternoon, Rachel stood at the door, eyes rimmed red. "Ethan, one last chance. Don't finalize it. We can fix this." A flicker of pain touched me, but I let it pass. You can't undo what you did. Tears slipped down her cheek. I never thought I'd lose you. I just wanted to help Sam. And you did, I said, at the cost of us. She picked up the carrier and left. For the first time in months, relief washed over me. 2 weeks later, we sat in court. Rachel's lawyer painted me as cold and unfeeling. Mine laid out the facts: unauthorized spending, forged signatures, a child who wasn't mine. The judge's decision was sharp. Rachel had disregarded marital trust. I was free of obligations to the baby, granted primary custody of our children, and Rachel was ordered to repay some funds. Her face crumpled. I only felt the weight lift. Outside the courtroom, Rachel whispered, I never wanted this. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You put their needs above ours, I said. That wasn't a mistake. That was the end. Sam tried to defend her, but I pulled away. You got your baby. You can support her now. I'm finished. Weeks passed. Rachel moved in with her mother, the baby with her until Sam recovered. I saw Rachel only at custody exchanges. She grew thinner, worn. Sometimes she asked about the kids, hoping for warmth, but I gave her none. Sam and Mark struggled with bills and stress. Rachel bounced between jobs. Meanwhile, my home was calm again. No screaming, no silent tension, just me and the kids, building routines. Movie nights, football in the park, ice cream under orange skies. When asked if I regretted my coldness, my answer was simple. No. She chose. I just stepped back. Months rolled into a year. Life was quieter, steadier. Rachel drifted in and out, still heavy with regret. I didn't care. The kids had stability, laughter, peace. That was enough. One evening, as the twins chased each other in the yard, and Luke practiced his throws, the sunset painted the sky red and gold. I realized then I had fought for this, not perfection, but peace. Rachel's shadow might linger, but the chapter was closed. If others called me merciless, so be it. To me it was dignity, and dignity was worth everything. I lifted the glass of beer slowly, letting the quiet wrap itself around me. The storm had raged, but I was still here. Not just surviving, but standing on the one truth Rachel's choices could never strip away, the future that belonged to me and my children. It was a Saturday afternoon at the grocery store when I first saw her again. I pushed the cart with the twins perched in the front, Luke trailing faithfully behind me. She stood by the produce section, a small basket in her hand, alone. For a few still seconds, we froze 10 feet apart, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. She looked thinner, worn out, yet her eyes softened when they landed on me. Hi, Ethan, she whispered. I gave a small nod. Hey. Her gaze flickered toward the kids, a faint smile tugging at her lips. They've gotten so big, she said. They're doing well, I replied evenly. A pause stretched between us as though she wanted to speak but held the words back. Finally, she murmured, I'm glad. I didn't linger. Take care, Rachel. As I walked away, no pain tugged at me, no ache returned. Only calm, the calm I had been building for months. Seeing her only reminded me of the distance I had traveled, and how certain doors, once closed, should never be opened again. The first holiday season after the divorce was unfamiliar, but in the most refreshing way. No battles about where to spend Thanksgiving. No bitter silences hanging over Christmas dinner. That year, Thanksgiving was mine. The four of us stayed home. I smoked a turkey in the backyard, Luke basting carefully while the twins sneaked spoonfuls of mashed potatoes. We ate at the dining table with football murmuring from the TV in the background. Christmas held the same quiet joy. I let the kids decorate the tree as they pleased, ornaments clustered at toddler height, candy canes dangling sideways. We sipped hot chocolate, watched old holiday films, and eventually fell asleep in the living room, wrapped in blankets and surrounded by torn wrapping paper. Rachel had her turn with them afterward. I never asked how it went. It didn't matter. My focus was on my time, making sure our space was warm and steady. The holidays, once exhausting, had become peaceful, and I had no intention of letting go of that. Months after the court's ruling, word began to ripple through old friends. Some swallowed Rachel's version whole, siding with her without question. Others reached out quietly, admitting they had heard enough to know there was more beneath the surface. I never tried to persuade anyone. People believe what they want. I was done exhausting myself defending my story to those who had already chosen their side. But I did notice the ripples. A few friends admitted Rachel's actions had made them reflect on their own marriages, how quickly trust can collapse when one voice in the partnership is ignored. My failed marriage had become a warning. I felt no pride in that, but no shame either. The lesson was clear. Trust is the foundation. Once it's knocked away, the whole structure crumbles no matter how strong it looks. I didn't keep tabs on Sam and Mark, but news found its way to me. Word was they were barely scraping by. Mark's hours had been cut, Sam's health hadn't improved, and the bills kept piling up. The baby, healthy and growing, was their joy, but the weight of everything else was crushing them. I heard they leaned heavily on Rachel, asking for her help when they couldn't cope. I never commented when people mentioned it. It wasn't my business anymore. Still, the irony didn't escape me. This was supposed to be the noble act that made everything better, but instead it had left wreckage across 3 households. I felt no triumph in knowing that. Only confirmation. Confirmation that my boundaries had been essential. I hadn't walked away out of cruelty. I had walked away to survive. Some messes can't be cleaned for others. Sometimes people must stand in the rubble long enough to recognize what caused the collapse. When Luke's 7th birthday came, it landed on Rachel's visitation weekend. She invited me over for cake so we could both be present for him. I went, for Luke's sake. Her mother's living room was dressed in balloons and a crooked banner. Luke darted toward me, frosting smeared across his grin. The twins chased each other around the coffee table. Rachel handed me a plate with cake without looking me in the eye. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. "This is for the kids," I answered. Mark and Sam sat nearby with their toddler playing at their feet. I gave them only a brief hello before focusing entirely on Luke. Together, we pieced his Lego set while others carried on with small talk. When it was time to leave, Luke clung to me in a tight hug. That was all I needed. I walked out without looking back. One rainy Tuesday, her name lit up my phone. I almost let it ring out, but curiosity made me answer. Her voice was fragile. "Ethan, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm struggling. Work's slow. Bills are piling up. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." I leaned back in my chair. "Rachel, if this is about money—" "It's not just that," she cut in. "I'm tired. I feel like everything I did was for nothing." I stayed silent, letting her words spill out. "I know I hurt you. I ruined what we had. But I didn't think it would turn out like this." When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "I'm sorry you're going through that, but those were your choices. I can't carry them for you." Silence. Then a faint whisper. "I figured you'd say that." The line went dead. I sat there for a long while, listening to the rain. For a brief second, the old version of me stirred, wondering if I should have softened, offered help. But the thought passed quickly. I had already lived the consequences of putting her needs above my boundaries. I wasn't going back. And in the days that followed, I realized just how little the call shook me. No sleepless nights, no guilt, just clarity. Rachel's struggles no longer belonged to me. That was the difference now. I no longer lived in the what-ifs. I dealt with what is. And what is was this. I had my kids, my peace, and my self-respect. Rachel had her choices. We both lived with the results. At Luke's school spring concert, I sat in the front row with the twins, eager to watch him sing. Rachel slipped in just before the show, choosing a seat 2 rows behind me. When the music started, Luke scanned the crowd until his eyes found mine. I smiled and raised a thumbs up. He grinned wide and sang louder, as if the whole gym was his stage. During intermission, Rachel approached. "He's really grown into himself," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "He's doing great." She nodded, then stepped away. No apologies, no digging up the past, just small words about our son, and that was enough. Later, when Luke ran into my arms after the show, that was the memory I held on to. The rest was just noise. Another Saturday, I dropped the kids off at Rachel's mother's house. Rachel was juggling a crying toddler on her hip while struggling with a basket of laundry. Her hair was messy, her clothes loose. She looked exhausted. Bills lay stacked on the counter inside, untouched. Sam's car sat in the driveway, but neither she nor Mark seemed to be helping. For a brief moment, I almost offered to carry the laundry in. Almost. But then I remembered the nights she told me my opinion didn't matter, the way she shut me out when it counted most. I gave a polite nod instead. "I'll see the kids Sunday evening." Driving away, it hit me. Her daily life was now a reflection of the choice she made, and I wasn't about to step into it again. That Sunday evening, Luke was quiet in the car. Finally, he asked, "Dad, when Mom's sad, does it make you sad too?" I thought carefully. "I don't like seeing anyone sad, Luke, but sometimes people feel sad because of choices they made, and those feelings are theirs to work through." "So, you can care about someone but not fix their problems?" he asked. "Exactly," I said. "You can care, but still keep your boundaries. Sometimes that's the kindest thing you can do for yourself." He nodded slowly and joined his siblings inside, and I realized even in the chaos of it all, I was teaching them something valuable. Self-respect, even when it hurts. Not long after, Rachel texted, "Sam's having a barbecue this weekend. The kids would love if you came." The old me might have gone telling myself it was for the kids. But I knew better now. That backyard was where the disaster began. I wasn't interested in walking onto that stage again. "Thanks, but I'll pass," I typed back. "I'll make other plans with the kids when they're with me." Her reply came quick. "Okay." No arguments, no guilt trips. The next day, while they went to the barbecue, I stayed home. I fixed the fence, grilled a steak, sat in the shade with a cold beer. It felt right, choosing my own peace instead of walking back into old chaos. Not every invitation is a bridge. Some are traps to the past. And I had no intention of crossing one just to prove civility. I'd already found mine in staying away. That summer was the first one in years that carried the quiet rhythm of normal life. No hushed quarrels drifting out of the kitchen, no abrupt trips to Dallas that left more questions than answers, and no unmarked packages from clinics arriving under cover of night. Instead, the kids and I carved out our own rituals, simple but ours. Friday evenings became pizza nights, the kitchen filled with the smell of dough and sauce. Luke took charge of laying out the pepperoni with a seriousness that made me smile, while the twins squabbled good-naturedly over who earned the right to scatter the cheese. Saturdays stretched into adventures, either a morning of fishing down at the lake, lines dancing in the water, or a drive to the minor league ballpark where baseball blended with dripping ice cream cones and sticky fingers. Rachel still had her time with them, but I no longer asked where she went or what she did. Whatever world she moved in, it stayed separate from mine. One evening, as the sun sank low and the faint scent of a neighbor's barbecue carried on the breeze, a realization struck me. I had stopped bracing for the next fight. My shoulders were no longer knotted with tension, and my mind wasn't constantly replaying imagined arguments or rehearsing sharp retorts. For the first time in years, my life wasn't tethered to her choices. It was defined by mine, and I intended to guard that freedom. By late August, whispers about Sam and Mark began reaching me again, never from Rachel directly, but through mutual acquaintances. Mark had picked up extra warehouse shifts, while Sam's fragile health still weighed on them. Their toddler was in that restless stage, full of energy yet resistant to sleep. leaving them perpetually worn out. Rachel, it seemed, had slipped back into their orbit, taking on more of the child care, sometimes overnight, sometimes for entire stretches of days. I didn't ask her about it. I didn't need to. The pattern was, clear. She had returned to the role that had once unraveled everything. The difference now was simple. No marriage hung in the balance. A part of me wondered if she viewed it as atonement, or if she simply couldn't untangle herself from the belief that saving her sister was worth every sacrifice. Either way, it wasn't my burden anymore. I had stopped trying to unravel her decisions the day I realized they didn't have to govern mine. Distance gave me that gift, the ability to care without being consumed. One Saturday, I crossed paths with Rachel in the grocery store. I was weighing apples against grapes with the twins when I heard her voice. She stood behind me, a toddler perched in her cart, jingling plastic keys. Shadows hung beneath her eyes, and her cart was stacked with diapers, formula, and cut-rate frozen meals. We traded pleasantries, Luke's obsession with baseball cards, the twins mastering their bikes. The conversation stayed surface level, polite but detached. When we parted, she managed a thin smile. "Take care, Ethan." "You too," I said, nodding. As I wheeled my cart away, I glanced back. She looked smaller somehow, as if the sum of her choices had finally settled on her shoulders and would never lift. What I felt wasn't triumph, but something quieter, a recognition that time doesn't erase consequences. It only makes them sharper in daylight. That evening, as we unpacked groceries, Emma asked, "Dad, why doesn't Mom live with us anymore?" I froze, apples in hand. Before I could answer, Ben added, "Yeah, and why is she always with Aunt Sam's baby?" I knelt so I could face them directly. "Mom made some choices a while back that changed things between us," I told them gently. "It's not because of you, and nothing you did. Sometimes adults can't live together anymore, but they still love their kids." Emma frowned. "But you don't love her anymore." I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I'll always care about her because she's your mom, but loving someone doesn't always mean you can stay with them." They seemed satisfied, darting off to play while I finished unpacking. I stood there afterward, struck by the truth I had just spoken aloud. Love, on its own, is never enough. A week later, Rachel's email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "Only for the kids." She listed upcoming school costs, field trip fees, sports gear, yearbooks, and asked me to send her the money so she could handle it all at once. I read it twice, then replied, "I'll pay the school directly, as always." Hours later, another message appeared. "It would be easier if you just sent it to me. I promise it'll all go to the kids." I held my ground. "I'm comfortable paying the school. That way, we both know it's covered." She never replied again. It wasn't about mistrust for the sake of bitterness. It was about boundaries. I'd learned painfully that when money and blurred lines collide, regret isn't far behind. I wasn't going back to those days. In October, a letter from the court arrived, routine paperwork about custody and a reminder of the next review date. Seeing the seal jolted memories of that final hearing. Rachel sitting across from me, her lawyer spinning emotional narratives while the judge's face remained unreadable. Then the words that changed everything. "Mr. Carter retains primary custody. Mrs. Carter will have visitation as outlined. No spousal support will be awarded." Those sentences had reshaped my life. They transformed my personal boundaries into legal ones, enforceable and solid. Setting the letter aside, I felt a calmness marriage had never given me. The next court date wasn't a looming storm. It was merely a reminder that I had fought for my peace and won. Not long after, my phone lit with Sam's name. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was careful, tentative. "Ethan, I know we haven't talked, but I wanted to thank you for letting Rachel help with the baby these past months." I almost laughed. "I didn't let her, Sam. She makes her own choices." A pause. "Right. I just, I know it's been hard, and I wanted you to know I never meant for any of this to wreck your life. I drew a slow breath. Intentions don't erase outcomes, Sam. You got what you wanted. I lost what I had. That's the reality. Silence hung before she finally whispered, I guess you're right. The line clicked dead. Oddly, I didn't feel anger afterward. Instead, it was as though a half-finished chapter had finally closed. That night, I drove aimlessly, the road stretching under streetlights, the city quiet. I passed places heavy with memory, the park where the kids once played, the diner where Rachel and I once shared late-night pie, the theater of our first date. None of it stung anymore. They felt like scenes from a life that belonged to someone else. Somewhere along that drive, I understood that my so-called revenge was never about inflicting pain. It was about reclaiming myself. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the porch light glowed softly, the house stood still, and my children slept inside. That was my life now. Steady, quiet, mine. It wasn't the custody ruling or watching Rachel wrestle with her choices that gave me closure. It was waking each day knowing my home was truly mine, knowing my kids could laugh freely here, knowing that every decision was made with them in mind, without someone else cutting me out. Rachel had chosen autonomy, and she had it, but autonomy without partnership is only isolation. That was her lesson to learn, not mine. For me, the lesson was clear. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you lock when someone has proven they can't be trusted with the key. I don't wish Rachel harm. I don't wish her well either. I simply wish her away from my peace. Because dignity isn't won in courtrooms or arguments. It's kept by refusing to let another person's chaos dictate your life. And that, finally, is my reward. Freedom, clarity, and a life wholly mine.